All right, we are live, football fans. Welcome to another episode of the Football v Football podcast. This is the NFL Conference Championship reaction show. What a couple games here! Either best case scenario or worst case scenario, depending on who you're rooting for. But before we get started, we're partnered up with SeatGeek. So if you're going to any sporting event or a concert or comedy show or anything like that, if you want to save $20, enter code FOOTBALLVFOOTBALL, all one word, at checkout and get $20 off. Why not? And with that, I'll introduce the guest here, Cowboy Starcast. He's not really a guest; he's a mainstay in the podcast here, Cowboy Starcast, aka OY. How you doing after those couple games, man?
Good, man. Some interesting outcomes we had today. I don't know. I guess we'll jump into it. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. We'll start off with the AFC game that started first. It started off with some pregame shenanigans with Justin Tucker lined up there on like the 10-yard line of the Chiefs side that were warming up. And then he moved to the 5-yard line. And I don't know what he was doing because, like, really, are you, like, even kicking field goals from there? And then Travis Kelce took his stuff, started throwing it. They were starting to get into it. You said in the group chat, why is he starting beef with Mahomes and Kelce? I didn't really understand. I thought he was just playing mind games. But obviously that didn't help. What are your initial thoughts about this Chiefs-Ravens game?
So, real quick about that, what's funny about that is I've seen this a few times now over the past few years. I don't know how long this kind of stuff might be going on, but I just remember, I think it was either 2 years ago or it was either 21 or 22. One of the times that we played the Niners, Cowboys played the Niners in the playoffs, and our kicker was just warming up. And I don't know if you remember this, but like the 49ers, like Trent Williams and I think somebody else came over and were basically trying to intimidate him, like saying stuff to him and like getting it, like, stuff like that. It was just like pregame, like, when the players are on the field stretching, practicing, like kicking, things like that. So I've seen this before. This one seemed a little different because initially when I sent that, I was like, bro, why are they messing with the kicker? But then, like, I think I looked into it a little more. I think the kicker was down on like Chiefs end, and I think he was messing with them. I don't care. Like, it's like I'm all here for like the mind games and stuff. Like, it's fun, right? And I think this kind of ties into like my overall kind of what I thought going into the game. I always felt like Baltimore was a very mentally tough team. Like, they have a winning culture, they have a football culture. They're
still there.
They're a blue collar city, so seeing stuff like that, I didn't really think it would affect the Ravens, and I don't really think any of that stuff had anything to do with what happened in the game. But definitely some, like you said, some shenanigans. These are too proud.
You're cutting in and out a little bit. I'll just go ahead and talk until you come back. But yeah, are you there? Are you there? Okay, I think you're fully back now. But yeah, you were talking about some of the pre-match head games.
Okay.
Yeah, it's cutting in and out. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I agree that I think this one was a little bit unusual in that he was going after the two biggest guys on the team, Kelce and Mahomes, and trying to get in their heads, and was really like lining up on their side of the field. Even though what I was hearing was that it's not up until 60 to 90 minutes before the game that you are able to take sides as a team. The visiting team goes to one side, home team goes to another side. So he was within his right to do it because I think maybe this was like 2 hours before the game, and both of them were out there just like really, really early, like earlier than most people are out there. So that was kind of interesting, and I'll just kind of dive into my initial thoughts about the game. to me, this was in the first half. It was a big Pacheco game. I thought. I thought he was doing a lot of work both in the passing game and the running game, and it was Mahomes just hooking up with Kelce as he usually does. Um, it was just a smattering of Rashee Rice, but really, it was it's what he's always done. It's just pass it to Kelce. Now they have a good running back in Pacheco, so get him the ball a lot. But it wasn't much more than that. And I felt like in the second half, Chiefs were getting like a lot of those calls. Like there's a lot of questionable calls. Like all the group chats I was in that was talking about this game was talking about these calls that they were getting, and Chiefs get those calls. They've been getting those calls all year. If you remember, even in the beginning of the year, and then they got off track, and then now they're all of a sudden back, going to the Super Bowl. But on the Ravens side, I thought it was really puzzling how they didn't run the ball basically at all. Their running backs, Justice Hill and Gus Edwards, ran it a total of 6 times. And the Ravens are known for their running. And that's what differentiates them, because Lamar Jackson, to me, if you take away his running, and of course he was their leading running back today, and he was a guy that caught his own pass. He's a guy that if you take away his running, he is a below average NFL quarterback. And he just is. And, he found Zay Flowers a few times today. That was the big receiver for him. Had over 120 yards, I think almost 120 yards. And he's a speedster, and he gets open, and he's one of those guys that you can throw it to him in the flat or throw him a deep ball, and he's able to get it. But Zay Flowers also was a guy that kind of lost them this game because he got that taunting penalty early, in a critical moment. And then he also fumbled the ball at the goal line where they should have, I think, tied the game or something like that. Instead, I think they had to settle for a field goal. So I think, it was a combination of, a young guy and Zay Flowers making mistakes. The Ravens not playing their game, not running the ball, which they're good at. And then the Chiefs just, it was a 17-10 game. It wasn't that, it wasn't a blowout at all. But it was the Chiefs just playing their hits, just doing the same old thing. Mahomes to Kelce, and then a new wrinkle with Pacheco, and then sprinkling in Rashee Rice and then MVS for a game winner. But basically the receivers did almost nothing in this game. Naif is talking a lot of stuff about Mahomes. He's the number one Mahomes fan. And, they pulled it out. But I think it was more the Ravens not playing their game, and then a young guy like Zay Flowers being a little immature. What did you think?
Yeah. I don't know if I'd agree that Lamar would be below average, but I do think that his strength lies in his legs. Like, I think that's his greatest strength. And there were so many times in this game where I was like yelling, screaming at the TV, like, bro, run, 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 run. And like, there were so many times where he would run too late, or he just wouldn't run. He wouldn't escape. The overall theme, so I have 2 big takeaways from this game. One was, I think that the Ravens defense showed up and their offense didn't. Like, I think it's a really weird game where, well, my second point is that I think Patrick Mahomes played phenomenal. Mahomes and Kelce. I know that Mahomes, if you look at his box, like the box score, it's not that great, right? But if you watched how he dictated the game, I think he played a great game. But the Ravens defense also played a great game. And I think, both of those things kind of paradoxically are true here. There were so many times where they got key stops. I thought the linebackers, Roquan and Patrick Queen, played a great game. Like, there were so many times I saw Roquan, setting the tone, and I loved seeing that because he was trying to get that defense riled up. And I think they did a really good job of keeping that team alive and keeping them in the game. But yeah, I think the offense kind of no-showed today. I think there were too many mistakes in like big moments. I'm not going to kick, Flowers while he's down, but I think maybe him being a young player, right? The emotions kind of getting caught up in the emotions, like the taunting, reaching for the ball. They should not change that rule, by the way. I like that rule. Let the defense have something. Yeah, I just, I think that's kind of like the overarching theme here is that the offense for the Ravens, for whatever reason, just didn't show up today. And I think there were too many times where um, I don't understand some of the decisions that Lamar was making. I felt like he was forcing, that one pick that he threw in the end zone. It was like triple coverage, bro. And I don't know why he threw that ball. He was obviously trying to
That's
force
classic
something there.
Lamar.
Yeah, it was not a good throw, or at least it was not a good decision to throw that ball there. So I think the Ravens offense, for whatever reason, just didn't show up to play today. That's kind of like my big takeaway from the Ravens. That defense showed up, the offense didn't, and that just goes to show the other side. Which was my second takeaway, was Patrick Mahomes, who I thought this was. It's going to sound weird to say, but this just kind of was like another legacy game for him, right? Because now you're talking like, okay, this guy's gone to like, what is it, 4 out of 4 Super Bowls in the last 5 years or whatever it is. And I keep saying, we keep having these conversations, and I'm always the guy who pumps the brakes, and I'm like, hey, he can get there, just kind of let him get there, right? He's kind of getting there now. Like, it's hard for me to keep him out of like the top 5 or 6. Like, this is impressive, and he always shows up when it matters, and more often than not, he elevates his game, right? And I think what we've seen from them, the team as a whole, but especially him, he's on a heater right now. He got hot at the right time, right? The team wasn't that great during the season. He got hot at the right time, and you're seeing it pay dividends right now.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that Lamar throw in triple coverage into the end zone. And to me, I'm sorry. I've been saying that's just classic Lamar. He will always make that mistake. He also fumbled, lost a fumble. I mean, it was 3 turnovers for the Ravens to 0 for the Chiefs. And yes, of course I agree with Mahomes. He's a great player. He makes great plays, and we're going to talk about the Niners game and what I thought about Purdy and the parallels between him and Mahomes in the second half. But it just seems like, okay, I'm going to say a general point here about officiating that is in multiple sports. So in the NBA, basketball, you have several fouls that are judgment calls. You have the block charge, right? Which one are you going to call it for? It's just kind of a judgment call. And in the NFL, you also have, like holding. Holding, they say, happens on every play, and it does. That's a judgment call. You have pass interference, again, another judgment call. And you have a roughing the passer, which recently became a huge judgment call because we don't know what roughing the passer is anymore. Anything you do to him can be roughing the passer. It's just kind of at the discretion of the officials. So when you have so many calls that are just judgment calls, then you allow for things to go one way or the other and people not say anything because you're going to say, oh, it's just a judgment call. And there was a hold on Isaiah Likely on one of the key drives that the Ravens were trying to come back at that they just didn't call. And it just seems like everything on the Chiefs was getting called, but that Likely one wasn't called. And it's tough. It's part of the game, and it allows for things like this when you have so many judgment calls. And I'm not going to say that it came down to that. It was a very close game, but that was just a general overall point. But do I think the right team is going to the Super Bowl? Unfortunately, yes. Even though I wanted the Ravens to play their game, to run the ball and win, but they didn't. And you mentioned it. Yeah, getting on Zay Flowers is tough because he was probably the best player on the Ravens offense today. To be honest with you. But he is a rookie. He will learn from this. No more taunting. No more, secure the ball when you're near the goal line. But we're going to end up seeing Taylor Swift and Pfizer boy Travis Kelce and Pat Mahomes, the State Farm guy, and the Nuggies coach Andy Reid, and the NFL is going to get what they want, and they're getting done with Super Bowl.
Yeah, I guess
Any final words about this?
Well, I think the Cowboys should trade for Taylor Swift. That's what I think they should do. No, but look, as far as like the calls go, when you get to a certain point, when you're a championship team, when you're a potential dynasty, I don't even know if the Chiefs count as a dynasty. Honestly, that's a separate conversation. But like, when you get to this point, when you have like these caliber of players, I think a lot of times you see situations where the calls are skewed, or there's a certain level of, I want to say, like presumed favoritism, like, oh, he must have gotten held because otherwise he would have caught it, like that type of stuff. I think that stuff is pretty prevalent. But having said that, none of that, I don't think, like there was nothing so egregious that prevented the Ravens from winning this game. Like as far as the calls go, right? They, like I keep saying, that defense held the Chiefs to 17 points, and that's with me saying that the quarterback and the tight end played great. You hold a team to 17 points at home, and you're the 1 seed, you should win that game. Like that was a disappointing loss for the Ravens.
Yeah, I would agree. And you're right. It wasn't egregious, but I just know there's a pattern of every NFL game, close game, say it was 17-10, comes down to 4 or 5 pivotal calls. And this one, they just happened to go the Chiefs' way. And they seem to get those star calls that you're talking about that happen in multiple sports. So anyway, moving on to the NFC Championship game. The Lions and the Niners. And man, this game was going one way. And in the group chat, even Big Z, Bigfoot, emerged out of nowhere to say, damn, we're going to see the Lions in the Super Bowl. And, and it sure looked that way. I mean, it was 24-7 at halftime. It should have been 28-7, really. I mean, I really wish that they had, just got that last touchdown instead of the field goal and just made it out of reach, just like depress the fans. Maybe the fans would have started leaving. I don't know. But it didn't happen. And then I'm going to let you go ahead and tell us what actually happened in this game. Floor is yours. What did you think of this game?
At some point during the second quarter, I tweeted out that I was like, man, the Lions are tough. This is a tough team. Like physically tough, but also mentally tough. You basically you walked up to the bully in his house and you punched him in the mouth, right? Over and over. And they looked shell-shocked. Like that 49ers team looked completely shell-shocked. And I was like stunned, like pleasantly surprised. I was like smiling ear to ear, bro. I was grinning. Like I could not believe what was going on. I think what happened though, over the course of the game, at some point in the second half, I think we saw some youth / inexperience, right? Kind of dictate, the Lions haven't been in these big games as much as the 49ers have. So, you saw drops, you saw things like that going on, you saw miscues. And then, of course, and I'm sure we're going to talk about the fourth down decisions, right? Like, we can talk about that whenever we talk about that. But I think this game, a lot more than the other game, was a huge, like, you just saw 2 huge, like, momentum swings. The first half was completely Detroit, right? It was like 95% Detroit, and then it just completely swung in that second half. And it's just funny how that can happen, especially in these playoff games.
Yeah. And as we introduce NF here, we did already discuss some of the Chiefs Ravens. We can come back to it. We want to get your thoughts on the second game, the Lions and the Niners. What do you think about that game?
Yeah, what a complete choke job, man. As OY was saying, I was through the roof, and
I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
You got to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
can you hear me? Hello?
Can't hear you. Let me see.
He's in his Rolls Royce that the Crown Prince got him.
Can you hear me now?
Oh man, no, I messed up the picture,
bro.
Man, I don't know how to use it. I don't know how to use
Butler to unmute it for you, bro. There you go. I can hear you now.
Hey,
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, finally. All right, Nav, we got you. Riverside.
Yeah, I was just saying.
Man, it's a new project. We're talking about the second game, the NFC.
Complete choke job by the Lions. To piggyback on what OI was saying, I was also through the roof. I couldn't believe it. I was like, damn, the Lions are going to the Super Bowl. They're going to play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. This is crazy. This is amazing. Jared Goff. And then I thought about the times that you were hating on Jared Goff, Omar. I was telling you, this guy's a good quarterback coming out of college.
We're both Omar. Who are you talking about?
You. The other Omar loves Jared Goff. Yeah, you. When he was,
listen, if you got to see him as a Ram all those years, you would hate on him too.
Anyway, I thought he was going back to his second Super Bowl. I was kind of excited for him. But it was a complete choke job. And Dan Campbell, what the hell, man? You went for it on fourth down like 30 times versus Dallas. That was a questionable call to not go for it there at the end. Also there at the end of the first half, I thought you'd go for it. Ended up being the difference in the game, actually. They would have won the game if they went for it and scored there. Just complete.
But
hindsight, obviously, but it's what he does, right?
It's hard. I mean, listen, this is a team they were on the precipice of the NFC of the Super Bowl using this type of logic of going for it, and they, earlier in the game they went for it again, and Reynolds just dropped the ball. And I mean, I love this mindset that they have to go for it 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 3. I love that mindset. It's how they got this far. So I know there's going to be a lot of criticism about this, but it's how they get. And maybe, okay, because hindsight is 20/20. Maybe there is missing a little nuance about maybe you don't go for it every time. But this guy, he has one speed, Dan Campbell. He's go for it, and usually it works. Yeah. And this time it's unfortunate. Jared Goff made a bad throw one time, and then the guy made a bad drop the other time. But I think that they were the right calls.
Yeah, but I'm saying he should have gone for it.
I was going to say.
Why didn't he go for it?
He shouldn't have. Or
he should have gone for it at the end of the first half. It's right on brand.
They kicked the field goal, is what I'm saying.
They kicked the field goal. They left
I agree.
4 more points on the board. That could have been the difference. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying you go for it all year.
I agree.
So why did you change it up there?
Yeah, so I think in a vacuum, I'm all team go for it. I'm like, be aggressive. I'm a fan of analytics, but I don't think it's all or nothing. I think there are certain situations where you kind of look at what's going on. You kind of have to look outside the numbers sometimes. And the thing is, if you kick those field goals at the end of the game, that's 6 points off the board, right? So if you kick those field goals, I mean, I know this is hindsight, but I'm just saying, if you kick those field goals, it's a one-score game at the end when they scored on that last touchdown drive. So, those calls are going to be questioned, and I agree. I in that situation, I probably would have taken the points, but there are other things that were going on in that game towards the end. They were missing balls and bad throws, and all this stuff was going on. And also, bro, I said it in the chat. Purdy is the luckiest quarterback, bro. His longest completion was off the other guys.
He's Mahomes 2.0.
That was insane.
I don't know, man.
Okay, this is how I thought the game went. So, of course, we all saw that first half. Lions were dominating. I mean, they made that 49ers defense look like a ship. I mean, it was 14-0 after the first quarter. They had their way with it. And Ben Johnson, I have to say, the ways he was scheming guys open, the balance of runs with Montgomery and Gibbs, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown, and utilizing Jamison Williams. By the way, when Jamison Williams has a full season, that guy's going to be
It'd be a
scary.
problem.
This team, they have Laporta too. Not only that, but did you guys know that Zach Ertz is on the line?
Yeah, they just signed him.
Dude, this team's going to be – this is a team that didn't make the playoffs last year and almost got to the Super Bowl. And I remember they sacrificed themselves for the Seahawks last year, and they beat the Packers at Lambeau and ended the Aaron Rodgers reign. This Lions team is a very good team, and I would be willing to bet that the Lions are going to pay big money to keep Ben Johnson, because if they lose that guy, it's going to be tough for them to get back to where they are now. But anyway, 24-7 at halftime. They had a commanding lead in this game. It should have been 28-7. And then that third quarter, I just rewatched that third quarter before we did this podcast. That was a third quarter from hell for the Lions. I could not believe how many things happened, to that team to make it so that the Niners would, that thing that it comes off his helmet, and Ayuk makes that catch. Reynolds drops it on 4th and 2 when it's right in his hand. McCaffrey just
fumble.
McCaffrey is inevitable. Yeah, the fumble by Montgomery or
Gibbs,
by Gibbs. But dude, McCaffrey is inevitable. This guy, like, it's so funny to me that is he the only white running back in the league? Am I missing something?
I don't think so.
Am I forgetting about
he's
somebody?
the only one who's like nowhere.
I don't
Isn't it weird that there?
Yeah.
Bro,
Isn't it even like?
He's not a running back, man.
He's
Get out of here.
I mean, whatever.
Get out of here.
But the point is, like, what are the odds that a race with so few at that position would be like the best one in the league? It's so strange. I kept like thinking about it. Like, it's so strange to me. He's the one white running back in the league, and he's like the best running back in the league. And the way he runs is like unlike any other running back. It's very weird. But anyway, what happened in that third quarter, you could not script. You could not script how badly that went for the Lions. And then they tie the game up. It goes from 24-7 to 24-24. And then what happens there, the butts get tight. The Lions, they haven't been in this position before. None of them. Most of them, a lot of the top players on this team are rookies or Laporta, Jamison Williams first year, Jahmyr Gibbs. A lot of them are rookies. And then what I thought I saw from Purdy was
at the end there, yeah.
A Mahomes-like performance in the second half. He reminded me a lot of Mahomes. The evasiveness, the ability to get first downs when he needed to, finding the right guys. He was just on point in that second half.
He looked like the V4 version of Lamar Jackson, man. There in the second half with those scrambles.
He was running everywhere, man. That was crazy.
Grit.
He showed a lot of grit. He made the plays when he needed to, right?
Last pick, Mr. Irrelevant.
He's in the Super Bowl now.
And he's going to the Super Bowl, and we're getting another Niners-Chiefs Super Bowl matchup, the same we had, 2 or 3 years ago. And so what do you guys think about this upcoming Super Bowl matchup? The Niners were the best team in the NFC all throughout the year. The Chiefs were not, but they're there anyway, and I'm sure the NFL is loving it. Before we move on to that, Naif, I want you to talk about both. So talk about what you thought about the Chiefs game, and then just talking about Super Bowl matchup.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to talk about the greatest quarterback in NFL history and the performance.
Again with the hyperbole.
Hey, I've been saying this all along, and I'm going to continue to say it until he proves otherwise. The guy is back to another Super Bowl. We knew his floor was the AFC Championship game. We know he could lose in the AFC Championship game. It's happened before. But yeah, he got there, and honestly, he saved his best football of the year for what was the biggest stage up until now this season. And he just played lights out, man. The guy was great. He was holding the ball until the last tenth of a second where you could throw it, and he was making perfect throws. I was saying in the group, his rapport with Kelce came out to play, man. Kelce was balling for his girlfriend there in the stands. It's honestly, I thought it was a really down year for Kelce, but he looked like prime Kelce today, and especially with those receivers. Mahomes can't trust those receivers. We talked about it all year. Darius Toney let him down. So did Sky Moore. I didn't see any of them this game. He was throwing to all his white tight ends, and yeah, and then he had that nice throw to MVS to seal the game. That was just wow, textbook. Pacheco
Yeah.
came through. Um, yeah, it was just classic Mahomes. And the Ravens have a good defense, man, and they just couldn't get to him. I think it was the first time Mahomes got sacked in like 4 games. That one sack that they got him with. But just
Yeah.
textbook Mahomes, classic Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in the world. You know how I feel about him. But now I think he faces his biggest test yet. These Niners obviously can put up points on the board. We saw what they did against the Lions after being down 24-7. I think the Chiefs have a good defense, but the Niners have so many weapons. So I'm I, I don't think Mahomes is gonna wet the bed or anything, but I do think the Niners can win this game. I think it's the biggest test yet, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Niners do win the Super Bowl.
Of course not. I think the Niners should be
Yeah,
the
yeah,
favorites. I mean, I think, but I just mentioned, I think the Niners
yeah,
have the best team in the NFC
yeah.
all year. I mean, that's been pretty clear. And the Chiefs haven't been. I mean, the Chiefs, this is kind of a late run. I mean, you could have taken the Ravens to be better than them. Who was another team ahead of them? I don't know. I forget now.
Bills.
But there's a lot of teams at
Bills.
different points in the season where you thought, I thought the Bills were better than them. I know they kind of, you know, sloped off a little bit late in the year. But there's a lot of great teams. The Dolphins looked really good for a while. But yeah. So we'll save the Super Bowl preview maybe for another podcast. But let's just talk about. I think you wanted to talk about some of the remaining coaching vacancies, right? So kind of related to this, and that Ben Johnson is probably one of the biggest candidates, and Mike McDonald, the DC for the Ravens, is one of the other big candidates. And the two coaching vacancies that are still open are the Seahawks and the Commanders, and that could impact the Cowboys if Dan Quinn is picked as one of them. And I know you wanted to get your thoughts out there, so go for it.
I think just looking at it kind of selfishly, I think I was like winning like a really weird, trying to wait and see what happens. All these teams keep winning, and we haven't had these interviews. Seahawks have been waiting. I guess that's going to happen this week. And this week too. So I don't know. That's going to be interesting to see what happens. Because there was a report today that if Dan Quinn leaves the Cowboys, they might hire Ron Rivera as the DC. So if that's the situation, I would just keep Dan Quinn. Just look, I think Dan Quinn is good. Are you there? Good. So there, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think we lost Begney. Hopefully he'll pop back on. But
Damn, it's a studio.
yeah, I know. That's fine. We'll just hijack it and take it over, making a Cowboys podcast. So what I was saying was, like, yeah, Cowboys are in like this weird spot where we're just kind of waiting to see what happens with him. Because that's gonna like be the proverbial dominant. If he leaves, then our defensive coaching staff might look completely different, right? But I don't know if that's going to be the case now because I feel like Mike McDonald to Seattle is picking up steam, and I think Ben Johnson to the Commanders is something I can see too, especially after the first half today. I think he's like a hot name. So I don't know, man. I think Dan Quinn might be back. Do you have any kind of feel on that? Because I was just talking about Ron Rivera, and I'm pretty sure we both do not want Ron Rivera in Dallas. We're still going. We're still going. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely not, OI.
Yeah,
Absolutely
I don't know what
not.
happened to the
Honestly,
recording.
I don't mind Dan Quinn.
I feel like
We
it
all
cut
know
out.
what his kryptonite is, right? It's
Still
those
going?
Shanahan
Okay.
offenses,
Yeah.
and he's got to solve that, man. He's really got to get in the lab and solve that. I don't think it's something he can't do. I just don't understand why he hasn't done it
Right.
as of yet. I mean, he's had now multiple playoff exits at the hands of that coaching tree, and it doesn't look like he wants to solve it. But I don't think it's something that he can't solve. So I wouldn't mind if we run it back with him, but that's got to be something that he changes. And if it's not changed, obviously we have a schedule where we're going to play a few of those teams. So
Including
I
Shanahan
don't.
himself.
Yeah, including Shanahan himself. If it's not solved in the season, I don't mind walking away from in the season.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys know my thoughts on the Seahawks? I want Bobby Slowick. I mean, if the Lions are willing to part with Ben Johnson, I'll take Ben Johnson today. I was really, really happy with him. I don't want a defensive guy. I don't want Quinn. I don't want McDonald. Those guys just don't seem to be good coaches, especially in today's NFL. Like I mentioned before, good offensive coordinators get poached. I don't want my guy getting poached. And Slowick comes from that Shanahan tree. There's that picture that's been going around of that Washington Redskins staff from like 2012 that had like all the great coaches of the day, Shanahan and McDaniels and LaFleur and McVay and all these guys. Offense wins the day, man.
What do you think is
you
actually
want
happen?
a great offensive
prediction.
mind as your head coach in today's NFL. So that's what I want for the Seahawks, and we'll see. We'll see about where everything else falls. It's so tough. It's so tough to predict because now Pete Carroll is not in charge for the first time. So now we're getting a new guy in John Snyder because John Snyder, said he was making the decisions before, but I think it was really Pete Carroll because Pete Carroll, older than John Snyder, has more experience. I think he was making the decision. So it's hard to know the mind of this. He's essentially we have a new GM. So
Really,
um,
I think
I don't know. I hope it's
think you
not
guys
Quinn,
can end up
but
with
it seems like, of course, if
I
I'm
just
like
think,
placing odds, I would think
my
the
opinion, I
familiarity
don't
would
think
say
they
that
would
it's probably
wait.
Dan Quinn, but it's not what I
Like,
want.
there's something to them waiting. Is basically what I think, and I think Ben Johnson's going to Washington, especially with
It makes too much sense for Dan Quinn, man. Seattle, Dan Quinn, Seattle. Guys, I got to run. I'm crossing the border. I'll catch up with you guys later, though.
I mean,
See ya. Thanks.
it was still recording. We just kept going. Yeah. Still there. All right, that's cool, man. I'm gonna sign off for you. All right, thank you, everybody. This was Football v Football. Oh no, you trying to get back on? All right, y'all. Yeah, you're back. Oh, I was just about to sign off for you.